y'all, what's up? What's up? It's your girl here, Nia Leah. Welcome to the channel. So yes, there is two things I want to talk about the Resident Evil series. I know you guys have heard it already. If not, welcome to the topic. So I'm gonna go ahead and say this at the beginning. I'm just giving my opinion on it. I'm just reading it. Articles that are made by somebody else because I'm not the one that's writing these articles. I'm just reading it. I'm just the messenger. Okay. So the first one is it's about Ada Wong. So I don't know if y'all heard about Ada Wong, the voice actor that was playing her voice. She got a lot of backlash. A lot of people didn't like her voice. So yeah, so she clapped back at some people. So I'm gonna just scroll down and read what. So I think this is her right now, Lily Guile one. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name right, but this is Lily. It says being the first Asian actor to portray Ada in the Resident Evil video game is an honor, and I will forever be grateful to our producer and director for making the decision on authentic representation. It's unfortunate that with the game's release also came the all too familiar feelings of I don't belong, while criticism is expected. It's not the first time an actor of color faces racist and sexist harassment for simple participating in an authentic casting perpetuates an unhealthy image that further dehumanizes the community they seek to reflect. It is time we stop only capitalizing on the sexualized and mysterious Asian woman, and make space to honor every kind of Asian woman. My Ada is a survivor. She is a kind, just, intelligent, and funny. She is unpredictable, resilient, and absolutely not a stereotype. And so these are I think these are the pictures of her or different actors, or maybe this is her. I don't know. But I'm gonna say this. I've listened to the old Ada voice from Resident Evil 4. I played the old one several times, but my first time, letting you guys see me play the Resident Evil 4 2004 version was 2022. But I played the game several times. But I never played Ada Wong part, but I've heard her voice throughout the game. Um, Even on the newer one, it wasn't a deal breaker for me. Um, I didn't have no issues with her voice. It sounded perfectly fine to me. So I just want to let people. The reason why I said I played the old one because I want people to know I've been playing the Resident Evil series. I played the first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, bits and pieces of the fifth and sixth, Revelation, seven, eight. It's a long list, but I have played old Resident. I have played other Resident Evil games besides Resident Evil 4 remake because her game just recently came out, the DLC, Separate Ways. So I guess some of y'all really did took it very seriously because check this out. Ada Wong voice replacement mod. Wow. So basically it says down here, this mod is for those who were disappointed with Ada's current voice performance and would like to change it to something that better suits her character. All speaking voice parts have been completely redone and fully integrated in the games. Y'all gonna read the rest. I'm not even gonna finish reading the rest. Yeah, it's not really that serious. I'm gonna say this, and people might disagree with me. I think, and I've been talking about this about gaming issues all year, but I've been talked about gaming topics in the past. I feel like the reason why a lot of people are nitpicking now with certain games, because that's what's going on right here, is because the games are expensive. Probably some people pay, a lot of people been complaining about games. If y'all have not noticed, I've been talking about games all this year. I talked about Hogwarts Legacy. I talked about High on Life for Spoken. I didn't talk about Protocol Catalysto. I was going to talk about that game too. A lot of people complain about that game. You're going to hear a lot of people complain about games, which people have the right to complain about games because they are consumers. They have that right. That's their opinion. But I'm going to say this, and this is my opinion. And I have to say that because a lot of people don't like it when you voice your opinion. But we need to understand we're all on social media. We all listen to each other's thoughts and ideals, right? I think it's because the games are so expensive. They're $70. People are going to nitpick. For me, this was not a deal breaker for me. I didn't have no issues with her voice. I thought she sounded wonderful to me. Um, I don't know what else to say, but I had to bring this out because Separate Ways is out, and I know that a lot of people put mods on the Resident Evil 5 remake because people were complaining about. And I will say this: I was one of the people. I will say, when the Resident Evil 4 remake, Leon and Ada are kind of slow. They do run really slow. So I understand why people put mods on, but I didn't. I just kept them the same way, but they do run kind of slow. But other than that, I enjoy both I enjoy the DLC, the game, Leon Bird part and Ada Wong part. I don't have no issues with the voice. I'm cool with it. Anyway, going on to the next thing. So the next thing I want to talk about was Capcom's Resident Evil 5 dilemma. So I'm just gonna read briefly, and I'm gonna go play an article so you guys can hear it. So yeah, there's an issue with that, and they're basically saying that they don't want Capcom. They're saying that Capcom shouldn't remake Resident Evil 5, not because it was one of the the weaker, one of the worst series of the game. Because Resident Evil 5 and 6, they are kind of weak to me, except for Ada Wong part on her DLC on 6. I thought it was pretty cool, but that's another video. But no, that's not why they're talking about not. That's not the reason why they don't want Capcom to remake Resident Evil 5. This is the reason why. So it brought out that to get the low-hanging fruit out of the way, Resident Evil 5's controversial pun is released. In Res 5, you play as Chris, an American white man gunning down hordes of mostly black Africans affected with mind-controlling parasites. Some of those Africans can wear stereotypical tribal garb in later levels. There is no evidence I've seen that Capcom had ill intent with this concept. It can simply be that since Res 4 Fresh Out of Water premise in Spain was so successful, they decided to do it over again with the Chris in Africa. So you see where I'm going with this? Alright. I'm just reading it. This is stuff that you guys got, y'all people who are part of the gaming community. This is what y'all write. I'm reading it to you guys. I'm reading it back to other people who don't know anything about this. It's silly. It's very silly. So this is an article. I'm going to go ahead and play this for you guys so you can get more of the context of it, more details, okay?
Hey Capcom, let's not do a Resident Evil 5 remake next. By Giovanni Colantonio. When Capcom released its Resident Evil 3 remake in 2020, I was filled with dread knowing Resident Evil 4 was next. Capcom had proven it could modernize a survival horror game with Resident Evil 2, but I was skeptical that the same framework would work with a pure action game. Thankfully, I was wrong, and the newly released Resident Evil 4 remake is one of the series' finest games yet. With that smashing success, one might assume that Resident Evil 5 is next in line for a touch-up. But I truly hope it isn't. While I've been very wrong before, there's a much stronger case for leaving one of the series' most divisive entries in the past. Some of those reasons will be obvious to anyone who's played the original or is familiar with the discourse around it. Beyond that, though, Resident Evil 5's narrative doesn't actually fit into Capcom's current remake storyline. Its very selective approach has entirely worked around one of the series' biggest villains, making it clear that its current string of releases isn't building to the same climax. An uncomfortable installment. Let's get the obvious reason out of the way first. Resident Evil 5 was an incredibly controversial game when it launched in 2009 due to its story and setting. In an attempt to capitalize on Resident Evil 4, which took the series to a remote Spanish town, Capcom decided to expand on the international direction of the series. It would do that by sending Chris Redfield to West Africa to stop a terrorism threat. That would create an uncomfortable premise that saw Redfield, and his partner Shiva Alamar, storming through villages and killing waves of parasite-ridden Africans, most of which were black. With some calling out the poor taste racial implications of that idea, the game would draw criticism before it even launched. The final product would only make that worse. A large part of Resident Evil 5 would see Redfield and Alamar killing tribal, African monsters, largely based on racial stereotypes. A spear-wielding enemy type would specifically set off alarm bells. A remake of Resident Evil 5 would have no choice but to revisit that controversy, as there's no real way to work around them without an entire rewrite. Judging by comments from Capcom, it doesn't seem like the publisher is going to want to rock that boat again. In a 2010 interview with Gamasutra, now game developer, Capcom senior PR manager Melody Pfeiffer addressed the controversy and noted how it impacted the way Resident Evil games are made. Since the RE5 controversy, we have become much more aware of how important it is that we are part of the asset creation process early on so that we are able to have a say in the end product, Pfeiffer said. We are also designing a lot of our own assets from this side of the pond so that we are able to make strategic pieces of content that make sense for our market. We are working really closely with our producers in Japan to construct these materials for the West, and they are open more than ever to hearing our thoughts and ideas for assets. If the game drew such heavy criticism in 2009, one can only imagine what the reaction to it would be in a more socially conscious 2023. It's hard to imagine that Capcom would want to reopen that wound, especially for a game that's not nearly as celebrated as the previous ones it's remade. Considering that Resident Evil 5 is a fairly modern game that's easily available on new platforms via a remastered edition, a full remake seems like a needless risk for Capcom. And looking at the publisher, careful remake approach, it seems like the project has never been in the cards. The Wesker Saga. The Resident Evil series has one of the deepest and most complicated narratives in all of video games. It's filled with lore, telling a sprawling story filled with corporate corruption, government intrigue, and complicated characters that have radically changed over decades. If you just try to play each mainline game in sequence, you'll only get a small fraction of that story. Key details are housed in CGI films and obscure spin-offs. A major plot beat setting up Resident Evil 4 happens in a Wii light gun game. While Capcom has remade 3 big mainline games, it hasn't actually touched anything that leads into Resident Evil 5. That's mostly because the latter's story is all about one of the franchise's most important villains, Albert Wesker. The virologist-turned-terrorist has a complex storyline that weaves in and out of various games. He plays a crucial role in the first Resident Evil, with a shocking betrayal setting him up as a primary human antagonist, but he'd largely lurk in the shadows before becoming the main villain of Resident Evil 5. Oddly enough, Wesker isn't a major player in any of the Resident Evil games Capcom has remade so far. He cameos here and there, establishing his working relationship with Ada Wong, but his story doesn't actually play out in any of those games. Instead, his core moments happen in Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil, and Resident Evil Code Veronica, the exact 3 mainline games that Capcom has yet to remake. In some cases, the publisher has almost gone out of its way to downplay Wesker's involvement in the games it has touched. While Wesker cameos in Resident Evil 4, the bulk of his story happens in a DLC called Separate Ways that wasn't remade along with the original game. Similarly, none of the new remakes have come bundled with Wesker's Report, a pair of short films created to explain the character's backstory. Both were previously included in a Japanese remaster of the first Resident Evil. If Capcom were to jump straight into Resident Evil 5 next, its story would be somewhat incomprehensible to new players. It would essentially introduce an entirely new villain at the climax of their long-running story arc. You can't really have a modern version of Resident Evil 5 without revisiting the first game in code, Veronica at the very least. With those untouched, it very much feels like the publisher is working around that saga entirely to focus on its core conflicts. Between its racial problems and the current state of the remake storyline, Resident Evil 5 would be a much more complicated project for Capcom than any previous remake. It would require a total narrative overhaul, one that would almost make it an entirely different game. At that point, why bother? Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4 currently make for a neat little remake trilogy that doesn't need the context of later releases to work. It might be time for Capcom to move on from the series' past and fully invest in its future.
Okay, so there you have it. The person who blogged this made some good points. I will bring out. They talked about the political views, and then they talked about the racial views and stuff like that. The racism. There, I'm not gonna say they didn't make any good points, but I'm noticing that there has been a lot of talk lately after 2020. I mean, we always had talks about games, right? I feel now they're talking more of the political side. after 2020, I feel like they're talking more about the political side or the racism more after 2020. It was normally normally it was about other things, but now I'm beginning to see. Let me know if I'm wrong, but I'm beginning to notice that, and I think it's because what he's saying is because of the time frame that we're living in 2023, where everybody is on that cancel culture type and that fake woke thing. I've talked about this already on Our Legacy, the fake woke and the cancel culture vibe. There's a lot of that going on, so they're kind of like mixing it in with the gaming community, which I don't think the gaming developers had meant that, because if we're gonna keep it 100, then why did they make Resident Evil 4 in Spain? You don't think it's I mean, you don't think it's wrong to go? I think it's in Spain, or is it South America? One of the two. You don't think it's wrong to go there and just shoot up a bunch of Latino people? Or do you don't? And I don't hear anybody saying anything about Resident Evil 6. Do you think it's cool to go shoot up a whole bunch of Japanese people? No, it's not. But these are just games. These are just made up stories. I know this is gonna touch a lot of people, but I'm just keeping it 100. Then let's not, make any games in Resident Evil around the globe. You know, so I don't feel offended by this. I had this conversation with other gamers who are Black, African American, just like me. I don't feel any ways with this game. And then another thing too, I get it what he's saying, and I said this before with Resident Evil 5. The story is different. It's like one of the and I said it. I said that it's one of the weaker games for me. But if they make it, I will buy it. I'll play it because I'm a Resident Evil junkie. I've played the games that were I've played Resident Evil Revelation 2, and I didn't care for that game. So I'm a Resident Evil fan. I'm gonna play their games regardless if I like it or not. But for me to, like I say, I'm hate to say it, but nitpick, I get it. Everybody is. I don't know how to say this without offending people, but everybody is like in their feelings, especially when it comes to games. They are tearing them to pieces now. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. Like I say, I'll show you the videos that I made out recently about Hogwarts Legacy and High on Life and Forspoken. A lot of people, they are talking more of things about the LGBTQ community, things about the Black community or political views. You're seeing that now. That's all coming into the game. Before, nobody was hardly talking about it. It was some, but not a whole lot. But now, after 2020, things have changed. So I get what he's saying, that this might, offend a lot of people in 2023. But I personally think no. Because remember, Hogwarts Legacy was one too that offended a lot of people, and it still made a lot of money. People still went out and bought it. I got it because my friend bought it for me. My best friend, well, she bought it for me. It was a gift. So a lot of people play that game, despite all of the drama around that game. I don't. Y'all gonna have to tell me. What do y'all think? Something wrong with Ada Wong voice? I didn't hear anything wrong with the voice acting. Um, do you think they should make Resident Evil 5? What about 6? Do you think they should make that one? Do you think they should skip 5 and go to 6? Me personally, Capcom, y'all do y'all thing. Okay? I'm gonna tell you guys, like I told the other devs, do your thing, okay? Like, I play games you know, to get away from all the issues and dramas out in the world, and it seems like this issues and dramas is coming into the gaming community. I would like for it to go back how the way it was, but I know it's not. So that's why I made this video, because I wanted to discuss it. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just a messenger. Um, that's all I can say. I have nothing else to say. But yeah. As for now, see y'all later.